Hello everyone, welcome back, and I hope your day is starting off as fantastic as it possibly can. Unfortunately, it's not that fantastic for the family pictured behind me here. And I'm going to do this video. I was a little reluctant to do this video because I like to focus on Canadian issues and Canadian economic issues mainly. But this particular story involves a Canadian citizen, so I'm going to go through it and then I'm going to pose a question, not the typical question that would be posed by the mainstream media. The typical question that you might ask yourself after this story, I'm going to try and frame it a little bit differently. So let me just go through it here. There's two sources of information. It's CBC News and 10 News of San Diego. I'm going to bounce around from two articles between those two news sources and explain it to you. CBC News posted this story July 4th, and the headline is "Canadians in ICE detention centers left in legal limbo as families try to secure release." And they talk about a few families, but I'm going to concentrate on one specific case. Canadian Cynthia Oliveira was arrested by U.S. officials when she went for an immigration interview with her husband Frank Oliveira. Now they've spelt Oliveira and Oliveira differently. I'm not sure if that's correct or not. In Los Angeles. And this is her story. Cynthia was born in Mississauga, Ontario, but living in Los Angeles now. She was arrested last month when she and her husband went to an immigration office to complete an interview for her U.S. citizenship application. Her husband, Frank Oliveira, said what was meant to be a routine immigration interview ended up feeling more like a trap. Now, the story goes, Oliveira, the Canadian woman, moved to the U.S. with her family when she was young, her husband said. The two met in the 90s, married, and she kept her last name, so I guess their names were only different by one letter. Maybe that's why they felt it was true love. They had children together and had been living in LA since. So for about 30 years, they'd been living in LA. And you saw in that initial picture I showed you at the beginning of the video was her husband, and her three now grown children. About 2 years ago, since the children are now older, we decided to hire a lawyer and start the immigration process the correct way. But instead of completing the interview, Oliveira was arrested by immigration officials over a decades-old border issue, her husband said. They lured us into our immigration appointment, took my wife, put her in handcuffs, swept her away, he said. They didn't even give us an opportunity at the interview. Nothing. Oliveira, the husband, continued, said that in 1999, his wife, I get the two names mixed up, so I'll use husband and wife. His wife had traveled to Canada to attend her mother's funeral and was initially denied re-entry because she was pregnant and told border agents she planned to have the child in the U.S. Now, the CBC story continues, but it leaves out a lot of details. But 10 News San Diego elaborates on her story. Cynthia was born in Canada, said her parents brought her to the United States from Toronto when she was just 10 years old. In 1999, immigration officers at the Buffalo border crossing issued an expedited removal order against the Canadian after discovering she had been living in the country illegally. That's when she tried to re-enter the United States while pregnant. The mother of three said she entered the United States from Mexico by driving through the San Diego border a few months later. So she entered illegally. They didn't ask for my citizenship. They didn't do nothing. They just waved me in, Cynthia said. Of course, that was 26 years ago. Things were a little different then. For the next 25 years, she said she tried to live the American dream, working in LA, paying taxes, and providing for her family. Last year, she got a work permit under the Biden administration, which let her work legally in the country. So the U.S. government knew about her. They have files on her. The only crime I committed is to love this country and work hard and provide for my kids, she said, fighting back tears. Team 10 News of San Diego said they searched California and federal court databases and found no criminal charges under Cynthia's name. Francisco, her husband, said he'd been trying for over 2 weeks to figure out a way to book a flight for his wife to Canada, but can't get through to anyone at ICE to arrange the deportation. He said his wife has waived her right to a bond or asylum hearing and agreed to expedited removal by signing a form. Now here, of course, is the part that will be focused on by the media. Francisco said he voted for President Trump last year. I want my vote back. Both he and his wife supported Trump's campaign promise to launch the largest deportation program for criminals in U.S. history, he said. Even though his wife was in the country illegally, Francisco didn't believe she would be targeted. "We feel totally blindsided, betrayed," he said. "I want my vote back." Well, unfortunately, you can't get your vote back. Earlier this week, Trump and Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, toured a new immigration detention facility in Florida that officials have dubbed Alligator Alcatraz. "We are going after murderers and rapists and traffickers and drug dealers and getting them off the streets and getting them out of our country," Noem said after the facility tour. The Canadian government said it is aware of Cynthia's detention. "Every country or territory decides on who can enter or exit through its borders. The government of Canada cannot intervene on behalf of a Canadian citizen with regard to the entry or exit requirements of another country," Global Affairs Canada spokesman Clemence Grevy said in a statement. So of course, the most asked question here after reading this story is going to be this. The husband voted for Donald Trump. The wife, who's not allowed to vote, was a supporter of Donald Trump. The main issue that Donald Trump campaigned on was immigration and the border. He plainly said many times that he was planning on the largest deportation effort in U.S. history. So the question that most media will focus in on is, do you feel sympathy for these people or do you not feel sympathy for these people? And there's going to be a full spectrum of opinions. The most empathetic people will say that this is terrible. She's been treated horribly. She's basically a U.S. citizen. She's been living there for 30 years. She's going through the proper channels now and trying to get her American citizenship legally. The other end of the spectrum will say, well, she broke the law. She's living in the United States illegally. The rules have changed. The new order is set, and she should be booted out of the country. And before she's booted out, she might as well be detained in a camp for a couple of months just to discourage her from ever trying to get in again. And that'll be the rhetoric that's thrown back and forth in a lot of the media, and it'll cause a lot of arguments, and it will polarize people even more into two groups and keep those two groups angry at each other and incapable of rationally discussing the issue. So I'm going to pose a different question for you. How is it possible that these people, the husband in particular, who voted for Trump, how is it possible in his mind, however he interpreted what was going on during the election, and I don't know how involved he was, how much information he absorbed, but it's obvious that he believed that he and his wife and his family were in no danger. And he supported Donald Trump and his ideas by giving him his vote. And that's what I want you to discuss in the comments section. I don't want just bickering about yes, she should be detained, or no, she shouldn't be detained, or yes, she should be deported, or no, she shouldn't be deported. Let's fly at 30,000 feet and look down at this issue from above and try and understand, how is it possible that this whole family, or at least the husband and the wife, the husband for sure we know voted for Trump, how is it possible from everything that you know that was said in that campaign that he would believe that his wife would not be in any danger? And part of the answer is this: inflammatory rhetoric and slogans. Because the inflammatory rhetoric that coded this issue, the campaigning, always went something like this: we're going to protect the American people by crazy illegal criminals, rapists and murderers, some murderers that have killed more than one American, people that will steal your possessions and take over your communities, steal American jobs, people that were let out of insane asylums by other countries to come here and infiltrate and destroy our country, people that are eating dogs and eating cats. That was the rhetoric, and that's how it was presented. Now, what's happening to this family is the reality of the situation. And this is why being unaware or uninformed and bombarded by inflammatory rhetoric and slogans is so dangerous, because it will convince what seems like regular, decent people to believe something, believe it so passionately, to use their most important right they have as citizens to cast a vote unaware of what the consequences will be. And the media is complicit in amplifying some of this rhetoric. Every time I peruse the internet, I'm bombarded by over-the-top inflammatory nonsense. And I ask myself, well, how do citizens, how do normal people have a chance? If you can convince somebody who's married to a woman, who's living in the country illegally, who's not a citizen, where the person running for president is saying he's going to have the biggest mass deportation of illegal immigrants in history, if you can convince that person that he doesn't really mean his wife, then you can convince people of anything using rhetoric and the media. It means that we're constantly swimming and fighting and trying to live in a sea of untruths. And that's why on this channel, when I go through some issues and discuss some issues that I think are important, I go through 10 or 12 different sources of information, and I show charts and graphs and different tables, which might bore some people. But if you don't seek out the facts and you just listen to some slogans or rhetoric, you can unwillingly run towards the edge of the cliff like a herd of lemmings. So anyways, I apologize for presenting this not so fun video today. And all I could do is wish this woman the best. Come back home to Canada. She says that she wants to come back to Canada and live with some relatives in Mississauga. She is a Canadian citizen, and we should welcome her back. Leave some comments in the comment section. I'm interested in hearing your perspective on this. Subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the content. If you want to support my work monetarily on a monthly basis, consider becoming a channel member. You can click the join button, or you can click the link that I leave in my comment, which I pin to the top of the comment section below. I will catch you all on the next one.